Okay, hi, welcome back. Very quick one today. Little shout out to Poppy, who asked if I could do something on applied ethics. So I've got a plan here rather than actually a model answer, but what might be really good to do is see if you could then take this and turn it into a model answer. So examine how natural moral law can be applied to intensive farming and blood sports. I think it's more likely actually in the exam that they would probably ask for one or the other. But what I've tried to do in my answer is use some generic points that could apply to both. So we'll take it as if it was asking about both issues, but if it was one or the other, there's still quite a lot of stuff here you could use. So with something like natural moral law applied to animal issues, I would always probably kick off by talking about the hierarchy of souls. So this is the idea that there's kind of like a tree where humans are at the top, animals are in the middle, and plants are at the bottom. Now, this is in Aquinas' thinking, but he did take it from Aristotle. And the bit we need here is the idea that animals have sensitive souls, which means that they are able to sense. So they can grow, they can feel, they can sense, but they can't think like humans do. So the key thing here is that humans have rational souls, which means they can think and reason. And crucially for Aquinas, that means that humans can have a relationship with God, which is just not available to animals. Therefore, Aquinas is always going to think that humans are superior to animals because humans are operating on this higher level that's got moral responsibility, that's got a relationship with God, that's got a concept of reason and eudaimonia and the idea of going to heaven when we die. Animals don't have any of that. Moving on to the third point, neither intensive farming nor blood sports appears to violate any of the primary precepts. Now, you might be thinking preserve innocent life is in there, but we're pretty sure that Aquinas was only talking about human life because, like I said before, of the hierarchy of souls. In his writings, and particularly in the Summa Theologica, Aquinas does write about animals as if they're property rather than beings with rights. So he sees animals more like things than like people, and therefore it's not a problem for him if you don't treat them like people. You have to treat people like people. You have to treat people in accordance with the primary precepts from which we get the secondary precepts. But he just feels that you don't owe that to animals. So to take it in the sense of intensive farming for a second, it's geared towards feeding and meeting the needs of humans. Aquinas wouldn't have known what intensive farming was because it's something that's come along in the last 100 years or so. But if the aim of it is to feed more people, keep more people alive through being able to produce more food and more produce, Aquinas would be absolutely fine with that. There's nothing in natural moral law that suggests that he wouldn't. Preserving innocent human life is really central. You could argue as well that if people are well fed, if food is cheap, if everybody's able to afford to feed themselves and their families, that's contributing to an ordered society, that's contributing to raising your children. So stuff straight out the primary precepts here. So again, just to take it back to the hierarchy of souls, particularly on intensive farming, if you think about how the hierarchy of souls works, animals eat plants, and that's the natural order of things. And because humans are at the top of the tree, humans eat animals, and that's the natural order of things. So that's very much in line with how Aquinas thinks the world should be. So there's nothing really that would think that he'd have a problem with intensive farming, even though, and even when, it could be cruel to animals. He just doesn't really feel that animals are owed the same things that are owed to humans. Blood sports, largely this is going to be similar, but there is a bit of an exception, which I'll talk about. Aquinas probably wouldn't have any problem, in principle, with animals being used for entertainment, because animals are more like things than they are like people. He doesn't use those exact words, but that's the sense we get from reading what he says about animals in the Summa Theologica. Natural moral law doesn't contain within it any real protections for animals. It suggests that since animals are not humans, they can be put to any uses that humans see fit. So humans are trying to advance themselves. They're trying to, for want of a better phrase, live their best lives. If animals are needed to put that into practice, that's not a problem. Now, obviously, natural moral law isn't based on the Bible, but the Bible is seen as supporting what it says. So in the Old Testament, we've got the book of Genesis, we've got passages about humans having dominion over animals. So, for example, we've got the bit where Adam names all the creatures and then God kind of places Adam in charge of everything. Aquinas would have been familiar with that, and that may have informed his thinking. With blood sports, which again possibly would have been a thing in Aquinas' time, but we're obviously more aware of it now, if brutalising an animal led a human to be brutal towards another human, Aquinas would have a problem with that, because then you're not preserving innocent human life. So to give you an example of what that means, if somebody was involved in something like dog fighting and they were becoming quite desensitized to violence as a result, and that made it more likely that they'd be violent towards humans, at that point we've got a problem. But the brutality towards the animal itself on its own, if it doesn't spill over into violence towards humans, sounds harsh, but there's nothing in Aquinas' thinking that makes us think that he'd have a problem with that. So you're probably getting a sense that natural moral law doesn't give animals a lot of rights and a lot of respect. And it doesn't, because it's so human-centric. It's so much focused on the needs and the goals of humans that animals don't come into it. Animals are essentially a means to an end. Okay, so that's my little walkthrough of my essay plan. It might be a really good shout for you to go ahead and try and write that up as part of your revision. I'm going to try and do more of these over the next few weeks, so please do comment or give me a shout if there's any specific topics you like. I'm going to try and do as many as I can, but I probably won't be able to do them all. I'll do my best. Thanks very much for watching. Subscribe, spread the word, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.